The Amalfi Coast was a place where dreams seemed to come alive. The endless blue sea, golden sunsets, and beautiful
Please
villas
answer.
carved into the cliffs made it look like a paradise untouched by pain. But behind the gates of one of
Please
those
help me for
magnificent
me.
estates lived Elena Whitmore, a woman whose life was far from the perfect picture everyone admired. Elena was a young American woman who had moved across the world after marrying into the powerful Whitmore family, one of the most respected and wealthy families along the coast. To outsiders, her marriage represented success, elegance, and a life many people wished for. She appeared beside her husband at expensive gatherings, wore beautiful dresses, and lived in a mansion overlooking the sea. But the truth hidden behind those marble walls was much different. Inside the Whitmore estate, Elena slowly lost the freedom she once had. Her every decision was questioned, her every movement was watched, and her opinions were treated as if they had no value. The family cared more about their reputation than her happiness. They saw her as someone who entered their world, but never truly belonged in it. The most painful part was that nobody outside the mansion knew what was happening. The Whitmores had spent generations building an image of perfection, and they protected that image at any cost. Elena had learned to hide her pain behind silence. The only thing that gave her a small sense of security was an old phone she kept hidden away. It was not valuable, but to her, it represented a connection to the outside world, a reminder that she was still capable of reaching someone if everything went wrong. That night, everything did go wrong. A violent storm covered the coastline. Thunder echoed to mountains, and the mansion that once looked beautiful suddenly felt like a prison. Elena found herself facing a situation that made her realize she could no longer depend on the people around her, with fear controlling every breath. She reached for the hidden phone and tried to contact someone she believed could help. But in the darkness and panic, one wrong number changed everything. The call did not reach the person she intended. Instead, it reached Adrian Blackwood. Across the coast, Adrian's name carried a reputation that made powerful people cautious. He was known as a man who built his influence through fear, intelligence, and absolute control. Enemies avoided him. Business leaders respected him, and those who betrayed him rarely got a second chance. Yet behind his cold reputation was a man shaped by years of betrayal and loss. Adrian had stopped trusting people long ago, choosing power over emotions and distance over relationships. That was why the unexpected call caught his attention. A frightened stranger had reached him by accident, but something about her situation felt different. It was not a request from someone chasing money or power. It was a desperate cry from someone who had nowhere else to turn. For the first time in years, Adrian considered stepping into someone else's battle. The woman who accidentally contacted a Mafia Don had no idea that her desperate mistake would uncover a secret powerful enough to destroy one of the richest families on the coast. Everyone believed Adrian Blackwood had no weakness. For years, people had seen him as a man made of discipline, calculation, and power. But one frightened stranger's call revealed something hidden beneath the reputation. A part of Adrian he had buried so deeply that even he had forgotten it existed. High above the Mediterranean Sea stood Adrian's private estate, a massive property surrounded by cliffs, endless ocean views, and quiet landscapes. Unlike the luxurious homes of wealthy families that were built to impress others, Adrian's estate felt like a fortress. It represented everything he had built after losing the people he loved most. Years earlier, Adrian had watched his own family collapse because of betrayal. The people closest to him had chosen greed over loyalty, leaving him with nothing except the pain of knowing that trust could be more dangerous than any enemy. That loss changed him forever. Instead of allowing that betrayal to destroy him, Adrian transformed his pain into power. He built an empire based on one principle. Loyalty mattered more than wealth. Those who stood beside him were protected, while those who betrayed him faced the consequences of their choices. His name became respected across the coast, not because he demanded fear, but because everyone knew Adrian Blackwood never broke his promises. Despite his dangerous reputation, Adrian followed one personal rule that very few people knew about. He never ignored someone who was truly helpless. His closest allies understood that this was the only side of him that remained untouched by years of darkness. Among them were people who managed his business, protected his interests, and carried out his decisions. Yet even surrounded by loyal followers, Adrian remained emotionally distant. He had built walls around himself that no one had been able to break. Until Elena's call. Instead of revealing who he was, Adrian quietly began investigating the woman who had reached him by accident. He wanted to understand what kind of situation could force someone to call a stranger in the middle of the night. What he discovered surprised him. The Whitmore family's perfect image was carefully designed. Behind their wealth and influence existed years of manipulation, control, and cruelty. They used their social status to hide the suffering happening inside their own home. Their mansion represented success to the world, but for Elena, it had become a place where she slowly lost her freedom. Adrian understood that pain. He knew what it felt like to have someone else control your future. He knew the feeling of standing alone while powerful people decided your fate. The difference was that Adrian had gained the strength to fight back, while Elena had been trapped in a world where every escape route had been taken away. That was why he chose to help her. Not because he wanted another victory. Not because he wanted more power. Adrian had enough of both. He wanted to protect someone who reminded him of the person he once was before betrayal changed everything. As the investigation continued, Adrian prepared to step into a conflict that could challenge one of the most influential families on the coast. But before Adrian could reach Elena, the Whitmore family discovered that someone powerful had started looking into their secrets. Her home looked like a paradise from the outside, but inside those elegant walls, Elena Whitmore was fighting a battle nobody could see. The breathtaking views of the Amalfi Coast, the endless blue water, and a luxurious mansion created an illusion of a perfect life. But behind the expensive artwork, grand halls, and carefully decorated rooms was a woman slowly being pushed into silence. The Whitmore mansion had everything people dreamed of: wealth, beauty, and influence. Yet Elena discovered that luxury could also become a prison when freedom was taken away. Every room reminded her of the life she was expected to live, not the life she wanted. After marrying into the Whitmore family, Elena slowly began noticing things that did not make sense. The family's kindness disappeared whenever outsiders were gone. Their smiles became demands, and their promises became rules. She started discovering hidden truths about the family's past, including secrets they had spent years protecting. The more Elena learned, the more dangerous her position became. The Whitmores had built their reputation on control. They believed their wealth gave them the ability to decide what people could know and what people had to accept. Elena's questions threatened that carefully created image, and instead of answering them, the family turned against her. They blamed her for problems she never created. Whenever something went wrong, Elena became the easiest person to accuse. They made her feel responsible for situations beyond her control, hoping that constant pressure would break her confidence. Their goal was not only to control her actions, but also to make her doubt herself. But they underestimated her. Behind Elena's quiet nature was a strong and intelligent woman who refused to completely lose herself. She was compassionate enough to care about others, brave enough to face uncomfortable truths, and strong enough to keep searching for a way out even when hope seemed impossible. The accidental phone call to Adrian Blackwood became the first crack in the wall surrounding her life. For the first time in years, Elena had reached someone outside the Whitmore influence. She did not know who answered the call, and she did not know what kind of power that person possessed. All she knew was that someone had finally heard her. Meanwhile, Adrian quietly continued gathering information. He understood that rushing into the situation could put Elena in even greater danger. The Whitmores were not ordinary enemies. They were a family that protected their secrets with everything they had. Adrian began creating a plan that would remove Elena from their control while keeping her safe from the consequences of exposing the truth. But time was running out. The Whitmore family noticed changes around them. They sensed that someone was interfering, someone powerful enough to challenge their influence. Their fear of losing their reputation pushed them toward making desperate decisions. Elena believed her unexpected call had finally opened a door to freedom. She believed someone was coming to save her, but she was about to discover that the person who answered her call was not a normal protector. He was a man with a dangerous history, a feared reputation, and secrets of his own. When Elena finally believed someone was coming to save her, she discovered the person helping her might be the most dangerous man she had ever met. The man who arrived to protect Elena Whitmore was not a hero from a fairy tale. He was not someone who entered her life with a perfect smile and a simple promise of safety. Adrian Blackwood was a man whose name carried fear across the coast, a man respected by powerful people and avoided by those who understood what he was capable of. When Adrian arrived at the Whitmore estate, the atmosphere changed instantly. The grand mansion that once felt untouchable suddenly seemed smaller. The family members who had controlled every situation before now stood silent, realizing that the person standing before them was someone they could not intimidate. Adrian's calm expression and controlled presence revealed something more powerful than anger: complete confidence. The Whitmores knew exactly who he was. For years, they had heard stories about Adrian Blackwood's influence. They knew that powerful businessmen, politicians, and rivals carefully considered every decision involving him. Crossing Adrian was not a simple mistake. It was a risk that many people were unwilling to take. But what they did not understand was the true source of his power. Adrian was not feared because he acted without reason. His strength came from patience, intelligence, and loyalty. He did not destroy people randomly. He studied situations, understood weaknesses, and protected those who earned his trust. That was what made him dangerous. Elena struggled to understand the person who had stepped into her life. The same man who offered her protection was also someone the world described as a threat. She had spent years surrounded by people who used power to control her, so trusting another powerful person felt almost impossible. But Adrian was different. He did not demand anything from Elena. He did not force her to follow his decisions or make choices for her. Instead, he gave her something she had not experienced in a long time: the ability to choose. For Elena, that difference meant everything. She began realizing that control and protection were not the same. The Whitmores used power to take away her freedom, while Adrian used his power to return it. Slowly, a fragile trust began forming between them. Adrian saw the strength Elena had hidden beneath years of pressure. He understood that she was not someone who needed to be rescued forever. She needed the chance to stand on her own again. His role was not to replace her strength, but to help her find it. Meanwhile, the Whitmore family started understanding the seriousness of their mistake. They had underestimated Elena's courage, and they had underestimated the stranger who answered her call. Their carefully protected image was now facing a threat from someone who knew how to expose the truth. The family began searching for ways to fight back, but Adrian was already several steps ahead. He had spent years learning how powerful people protected their secrets. He knew that wealth could hide mistakes, but it could never erase the truth completely. While the Whitmores prepared for a battle against one dangerous man, Adrian quietly prepared something far more powerful than fear. He had evidence, he had a plan, and he had discovered the secret the Whitmore family had spent years hiding. The Whitmores thought they were fighting one powerful man, but Adrian had already uncovered the secret weapon that could bring their entire empire down. Behind the wealth, luxury, and perfect family image was a secret buried for years, and Elena Whitmore was the missing piece of the truth. The Whitmore name represented success across the coast, but Adrian Blackwood knew that powerful families often built their empires on things they never wanted the world to discover. After studying their history, Adrian uncovered a pattern hidden beneath decades of influence. The Whitmores had not reached their position through hard work alone. Their success was connected to manipulation, betrayal, and carefully hidden decisions that had damaged countless lives. Every achievement they celebrated had another side. Adrian's investigation revealed that the family had spent years controlling information, silencing people who threatened them, and using their reputation as a shield. They believed money could protect them from consequences, and for a long time they were right. But Elena's arrival had changed everything. The Whitmores were not afraid because Elena was powerful. They were afraid because she was honest. She had entered their world without understanding the darkness behind their perfect image, and once she began discovering the truth, she became the one person who could expose everything. The most painful discovery came when Elena learned that even her own marriage had been built on hidden intentions. The people she trusted had not been protecting her. They had been using her position to strengthen their family's reputation. The realization broke something inside her. For so long, Elena had questioned herself. She wondered if she was the problem, if she was too sensitive, or she simply failed to understand the world she had married into. But the truth revealed something completely different. She had been surrounded by people who benefited from her silence. Adrian watched as Elena struggled with the betrayal, but he did not allow her pain to become another weakness. Instead of making decisions for her, he helped her see the strength she already possessed. Behind the feared reputation and cold expression, Elena began noticing a different side of Adrian. He was not only a man who knew how to defeat enemies. He was someone who understood pain, loss, and the loneliness of carrying heavy burdens. Their connection grew through trust. There were no promises based on fantasy, no instant solution to years of suffering. Instead, there was respect between two people who had both experienced betrayal and learned how difficult it was to trust again. With Adrian's support, Elena started changing. The woman who once remained silent inside the Whitmore mansion began standing stronger. She no longer saw herself as someone trapped by circumstances. She became someone ready to face the people who had tried to control her. But the Whitmores were not prepared to lose everything. As Adrian moved closer to exposing their secrets, his enemies began preparing their own strategy. They knew that if Adrian succeeded, their entire empire could collapse. They were no longer fighting to protect their reputation. They were fighting for survival. The final confrontation was approaching, and both sides understood that there would be no easy escape. Just when Elena thought the truth would set her free, the Whitmore family made one final move that could separate her from Adrian forever. Adrian Blackwood had spent years searching for revenge, but protecting Elena forced him to face the one battle he had avoided for years, the battle within himself. For a long time, revenge had been the reason he kept moving forward. Every betrayal, every loss, and every person who had taken something from him became another reason to build more power. But now, standing beside someone who had suffered the same kind of betrayal, Adrian began questioning everything he had believed. His entire life had been shaped by the need to prove that nobody could ever hurt him again. He built an empire strong enough that enemies feared his name before they ever faced him. He believed that destroying those who caused pain was the only way to find peace. But Elena showed him something he had forgotten. Winning a battle did not always mean healing the wounds left behind. As Adrian prepared his final move against the Whitmore family, he realized that revenge alone would only keep him connected to the same darkness that had controlled his past. Elena's journey reminded him that strength was not only about defeating enemies, it was also about refusing to become like them. Their connection grew through understanding. They both knew what it felt like to lose control of their own lives, to have others make decisions for them, and to carry pain that nobody else could see. But unlike before, Elena was no longer waiting for someone to save her. She became part of the plan. The woman who once felt trapped inside a powerful family's mansion was now standing beside Adrian, helping uncover the truth that could destroy everything the Whitmores had built. Her fear had not disappeared, but she had learned that courage was not the absence of fear. It was a decision to move forward despite it. Meanwhile, Adrian's enemies began attacking him from every direction. Knowing they could not defeat him through power alone, the Whitmores attempted to damage his reputation. They spread rumors, manipulated information, and tried to make the world believe Adrian was the true threat. For the first time in years, Adrian faced a challenge that could not be solved only through influence. He had to prove that his actions were different from the people he fought against. As the final confrontation approached, both Adrian and Elena were forced to face their deepest fears. Elena had to confront the family that tried to break her. Adrian had to confront the part of himself that still wanted revenge more than justice. The difference between revenge and redemption was simple but powerful. Revenge came from pain. Redemption came from choosing what to do with that pain. Adrian understood that destroying the Whitmores was not enough. He needed to expose the truth, protect innocent people, and finally end the cycle of betrayal that had followed him for years. The final plan was ready. Every secret had been uncovered. Every move had been calculated, and the Whitmore Empire was closer to collapse than ever before. But as Adrian prepared to reveal everything, one final discovery changed the entire battle. When Adrian finally exposed the truth, he discovered that the person behind everything was someone he never expected. On the cliffs above the endless ocean, two powerful worlds collided, and only one side would walk away with the truth. The Amalfi coastline had witnessed countless stories of wealth, ambition, and betrayal, but nothing compared to the battle that unfolded beneath the golden light of the setting sun. The waves crashed against the cliffs below. The wind moved through the quiet landscape, and the Whitmore estate stood in the distance like a symbol of everything the family had built. For years, they had controlled their world through influence and fear. But now, the secrets hidden behind their perfect image were finally coming to the surface. Every important figure connected to the conflict stood at the edge of this final moment. The Whitmore family arrived believing they could still control the outcome. They had spent their lives manipulating situations, convincing people that their wealth made them untouchable. But Adrian Blackwood was no longer the outsider they could ignore. He had come prepared. Instead of relying on intimidation or unnecessary force, Adrian used the one weapon the Whitmores could never defeat: the truth. Every hidden document, every betrayal, and every carefully protected secret was brought into the light. The family's empire began collapsing, not because someone destroyed it, but because the foundation was built on was never strong enough to survive honesty. Elena stood among the people who had once controlled her, but she was no longer the same woman who had hidden inside their mansion. The fear that once held her back had been replaced by confidence. She finally faced the people who had convinced her that she had no power. She realized something important. The strongest person in the room was not always the one with the most influence. Sometimes it was the person who survived everything meant to break them. The Whitmores tried to defend themselves, but their excuses could not erase years of manipulation. Their reputation, once their greatest protection, became the reason the world finally saw who they truly were. Justice did not arrive through revenge. It arrived through accountability. As the truth spread, the people who had suffered because of the Whitmores finally received recognition. Their power weakened, their influence disappeared, and the family that once seemed impossible to challenge was forced to face the consequences of their choices. For Adrian, the victory meant something different. For years, his empire had been built around fear. People followed him because they respected his strength and feared his enemies. But after everything he experienced with Elena, Adrian began changing the way he used his power. His influence was no longer about controlling others. It became about protecting them. Elena watched the transformation happen before her eyes. The man everyone feared had chosen a different path. He proved that a person's past did not have to decide their future. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, Elena finally felt the freedom she had searched for since the night of that unexpected phone call. The nightmare that trapped her was finally ending. The Whitmore empire was broken. The truth was revealed, and the woman who once felt powerless had found her strength again. But while Elena believed the battle was over, Adrian carried one final secret, one that could change everything they had built together. After everything ended, Elena believed her nightmare was finally over, but Adrian still carried a secret that could change their future. One accidental phone call connected two strangers, but created a story neither of them would ever forget. What began as a desperate mistake during the darkest night of Elena Whitmore's life became the moment that changed two wounded hearts forever. After the fall of the Whitmore Empire, Elena finally experienced something she had almost forgotten: freedom. The same coastline that once represented her loneliness became a reminder of her strength. The Amalfi Coast, with its peaceful waves and endless horizon, was no longer the place where she felt trapped. It became the place where she started rebuilding herself. For the first time in years, Elena could make her own decisions. She no longer lived according to someone else's expectations. She no longer measured her worth through the opinions of people who tried to control her. The woman who once struggled to find her voice had become someone who understood her own value. Her journey was not about being rescued by someone powerful. It was about discovering the power she already had within herself. Adrian Blackwood also changed after everything ended. For years, he believed strength meant never showing weakness. He built walls around his emotions and convinced himself that loneliness was the price of survival. His empire gave him influence, but it never gave him peace. Until Elena entered his life. Saving her did not only change Elena's future, it also healed a part of Adrian that he thought was lost forever. Through her courage, he learned that protecting someone was not a sign of weakness. It was proof that even a person surrounded by darkness could still choose something better. The man who once lived only for revenge discovered the value of compassion. The leader who was once feared became someone people respected for a different reason. His power was no longer measured by how many enemies feared him, but by how many lives he could protect. Looking back, neither Elena nor Adrian could have imagined that one wrong number would create such a powerful connection. A simple mistake had crossed two completely different worlds. The world of a woman searching for a way out, and the world of a man who had forgotten what it meant to care. Their story became a reminder that life-changing moments do not always arrive in perfect ways. Sometimes they come unexpectedly. Sometimes they appear during the hardest moments. And sometimes the person who enters your life by accident becomes the person who helps you find yourself again. As the sun set over the Amalfi Coast, Elena and Adrian stood as proof that betrayal does not have to define a person's future. Pain can become strength, loss can become wisdom, and broken people can still find a reason to hope. The call was made by accident, but the bond it created proved that sometimes a person who enters your life by mistake becomes the one who changes everything.